Let's talk about the war in Yemen. It is, without a doubt, one of the most complex conflicts out there. And even if you follow the news pretty closely, the shifting alliances and the incredibly deep history can make your head spin. So we're going to try and unravel this whole story, right from the beginning, to give you the context you really need to understand what's in the headlines today. And hey, if you feel that way, you are definitely not alone. I mean, this is a conflict so tangled that even a lot of Yemenis have a hard time keeping track of every single player. Our goal here is pretty simple: give you that solid foundation so you can follow the story from here on out with real confidence. So, the big question is, where do we even begin? With the story this tangled, the starting point isn't a date on a calendar. It's a place. We have to begin with the land itself. Yemen's geography, from its super rugged mountains to its absolutely critical ports, has always shaped its destiny. These huge contrasts have created these fiercely independent cultures and natural power bases that have really defined its conflicts for centuries. So first up, let's look at this land of contrasts. Because really, to get Yemen, you have to get its geography. That's what explains why it's always been this patchwork of different groups, each with its own history, its own power, and its own ambitions. All right, let's do a quick tour. Up in the mountains, you've got Sana'a, the political heart of the country. Way up in the far north, that's Sada, the Houthi heartland. Head east, and you're in the desert, the oil-rich triangle of Marib and Shabwa. Down on the southern coast, you have Aden, the super strategic port. And then stretching way across the east is the ancient land of Hadramaut. Honestly, each of these regions is like its own little world. And for a lot of modern history, these differences weren't just cultural, they were actual national borders. This divided past, carved up by competing empires, created two very, very different Yemens. And this split was etched out over more than 100 years. It starts back in 1839, when the British take Aden and turn it into this bustling modern port, a real gateway to the world. Then, after World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapses, and the North becomes this isolated, deeply conservative kingdom. Fast forward to the 1960s, and everything just explodes. A revolution in the North creates a republic backed by Egypt, which Saudi Arabia sees as a huge threat. Just a few years later, the British pull out of the South, and it becomes the Arab world's only Marxist state, a close ally of the Soviet Union. So what you ended up with was this incredible ideological divide. You had the North, a conservative, tribal republic, allied with Saudi Arabia and the West, and then you had the South, a secular, one-party Marxist state backed by the Soviets. I mean, they were two completely different worlds, literally existing side by side. But then the Cold War started to wind down, and this wave of optimism led to this hugely ambitious idea: unification. Now, this should have been a moment of incredible hope, but that fragile unity, well, it would quickly fall apart and end in civil war. So, in 1990, the two leaders, Ali Abdullah Saleh from the north and Ali Salam al-Baid from the south, announced a single unified Yemen, and there were huge celebrations. But the honeymoon was short. Southern leaders who moved to the capital, Sana'a, started getting assassinated, one after another. Southerners felt like they were being completely sidelined. The final straw came in the 1993 elections. Saleh used the North's bigger population to totally dominate the vote, basically turning Southerners from partners into a powerless minority. So, when the South tried to break away in 1994, Saleh crushed the rebellion, forging unity not through agreement but through pure force. And the man at the center of it all, Ali Abdullah Saleh, would go on to rule Yemen for over 30 years. His unique strategy for holding this fractured country together was famously called dancing on the heads of snakes. Saleh actually said it himself: ruling Yemen is like dancing on the heads of snakes. And this quote just brilliantly captures his entire political playbook. See, he never tried to solve Yemen's deep-rooted problems or get rid of his rivals. Nope. Instead, he became a master at playing them all off against each other, making sure that no single snake ever got powerful enough to bite him. And what a collection of snakes it was. Up north, he fought multiple wars against the Houthi rebels, but never completely crushed them. He used them as a way to keep powerful tribes in check. In the south, he kept the separatists down, but just let their anger simmer. He took American money to fight al-Qaeda, but, never quite finished the job. He was an expert at pitting powerful tribes and Islamist parties against each other, switching sides whenever it helped him. And for 30 years, the dance went on. But in 2011, the music stopped. The Arab Spring came to Yemen, and it kicked off the Great Unraveling, the total collapse of Saleh's system that plunged the country into the chaos we still see today. In 2011, huge protests demanded Saleh leave. He was almost killed in a bombing at his palace. Under all this pressure, he finally stepped down in 2012, handing power to his deputy, a guy named Hadi. But Saleh, the ultimate survivor, wasn't done. In an absolutely stunning plot twist, he made an alliance with his mortal enemies, the Houthis. In 2014, their joint forces stormed and took the capital, Sana'a. And as they pushed south toward Aden in 2015, President Hadi fled to Saudi Arabia and officially asked for military help. And just like that, the civil war went regional. And that brings us to this number, 2216. Now, this might sound like some boring UN resolution, but it is absolutely critical to understand. It gave the Saudi-led intervention international legal backing. It recognized Hadi as a legitimate president and demanded the Houthis pull back. To this day, it's pretty much the foundation of all international policy on Yemen. But this is where the story gets even messier. The very alliance that was formed to fight the Houthis was, in reality, just a collection of rivals. This created what you could call a war within a war. Yeah, the anti-Houthi side was never a single unified army, not even close. It was this chaotic mix of different groups who really only had one thing in common. They all hated the Houthis. You had southern separatists, Islamist parties, guys loyal to the old regime, powerful tribal forces, and the crucial part is these groups were often backed by different regional powers, mostly Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who had their own competing ideas for what Yemen's future should look like. So in 2022, there was this major political shakeup. President Hadi stepped aside, and in his place, a new 8-member Presidential Leadership Council, or PLC, was created. The whole idea was to bring the leaders of all these competing anti-Houthi groups, the separatists, the Saleh loyalists, everyone, into a single room to try and unify their fight. It was a massive political gamble to try and end all the infighting. So this is pretty much the state of play today. You've got the Houthis, who control the north and are backed by Iran. You have the PLC, which is the internationally recognized government, backed by Saudi Arabia. And then you have the STC, a really powerful group within that government coalition, which ultimately wants an independent South and is backed by the UAE. As you can probably guess, their goals don't always line up. And that right there is the heart of the tragedy. What started as a power struggle among Yemenis has been transformed into a proxy war for the great rivalries of the Middle East, especially the one between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So the future of an entire country is now caught in this incredibly complex web of local fights and international power games. Which leaves us with one final, pretty sobering question. After a century of division, decades of a leader who just played everyone against each other, and years of a devastating war fueled by outside powers, can the destiny of Yemen ever truly be decided by Yemenis themselves? That's a question that, right now, just doesn't have an answer.